If there's a Skype, that's American, we can have a Skype that's Chinese. If there's a Twitter that's American, we'll have the Chinese Twitter. And so we're going to force you to use that. And so once you get into like that, I guess that ecosystem, that infrastructure that they have there, you really don't notice it until you kind of like start operating outside.
And we are live. All right, Matthew. Is it Matthew or Matt? What do you like to go by?
Both are okay, man.
All right. Well, either way, Matthew, thank you for doing this. Thank you for hopping on. I appreciate it. It's early in the morning, so I appreciate you getting up, and I'm excited to hear more about you. I actually, as we were just talking about, I came across your profile on Twitter. I saw you ran for Congress, and are you running for Congress again?
We don't know because we have to draw the lines again. So there's some finagling with the Supreme Court, the gerrymandering / redistricting, and we're going to have to see how everything falls this time.
Oh, interesting.
So you know how they draw the maps every 10 years, right? So
I didn't know they got redrawn every 10.
Yeah, so every time there's a census, all the states around the country have to redraw their maps for the state legislature and as well as the federal maps as well. So this time in Ohio, there was a law that said, we wanted to have fair districts. Well, we have a very skewed state legislature which drew maps that was not in the favor of which was not considered fair. And so they deemed the maps unconstitutional, but because we got to the wire of running, we had to run the election. They said, okay, just go for these maps 2 years and we'll just figure it out in 2 years. So we have to do this all over again.
Oh, whoa. That is wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to figure out if you are. I'm excited to learn more about you as a person and a candidate. So I would love to hear your story as a person. Where did you come from? I assume Ohio. And how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah. Born and raised Cleveland, Ohio. Moved around quite a bit in Cleveland from, going to Cleveland Public Schools, then went to Bedford, Chardon, Solon, Bainbridge, lived in Streetsboro for a while. Now I'm over here in Bay Village, Ohio, repping the Cleveland Guardians hat on the shows these days, make sure that we can support the team. Spent quite a little time in Hawaii, moved over there when I was about 21. Went to the University of Hawaii, graduated political science, Dean's List, went over to China, learned Chinese. So I stayed in China for about 13 years on mainland China, lived time in Hong Kong, Singapore, 2 years in Taiwan doing my master's, and came back to the States, and now I'm back in Bay Village.
Oh, wow. I'd love to hear more about your time in China. That's a very unique thing, especially for a candidate to have spent time in China and know Chinese. I'd love to hear more about, what do you know about culture, maybe the government, how things operate over there.
Sure. Specific questions though, man. That's a broad one. You gotta let me, what do you want to hear?
Okay. What were you, when you went over to China, you studied Chinese, did you work there? What industries did you work in? What was the job?
Well, first I got a scholarship to study Chinese. So I studied at Beijing University, stayed around that area there. And in that area, it's called the Wudaoko area. And there's Tsinghua University, there's Beijing University, the two top universities in China. And so I lived in that area, lots of international students there from Korea, America, Europe, and so on and so forth. And so I just basically stayed there learning Chinese. After I felt that I was proficient, I got back into the industry that I basically grew up in, which was hospitality. So I started working in that again, and I was the general manager of multiple places over in Shanghai, and ran businesses and tried to lead a team to make sure that we provided good service and provided good business for people and were profitable for the bosses. And that's basically what I did.
Very cool. And then as far as I'm just curious, I've been lucky enough to know a few people who grew up in China, meet people along the way that have spent time in China. I'm always curious, as far as the day-to-day culture, does it remind you of America? Does it remind you of anywhere else you've been?
Day-to-day culture. Well, China's obviously China. It's a different place. Day-to-day, big cities have their advantages, in every city in China is a big city,
Yeah.
A small city is still as big as, a Chicago here, and then even the big cities are 2 New Yorks. So it's a big city vibe all over China. So you don't really need to have a car. You don't need to have, stuff like that. You're just taking the trains everywhere or the subways or taxis, buses, and so on and so forth. So your cost of living is pretty low. You just have to worry about, basic utilities, a rent, and then moving yourself around via, the huge public infrastructure. Day to day, like I said, cost of living is kind of low still, so there's different things you can buy. I think anywhere in the world, you could either spend a lot of money or you can live, within a budget. And, the average budget for America and China is different. So, you can go out and, get food still for, $1.50, $2 per meal, have, meat and, a big plate of veggies. So, day-to-day life was just, living in a big city for the most part, just in China. That's about
Government oversight was never a problem for you?
So I lived there from 2004 until 2000, shit, what was it? I want to say 17, 18, 19, something. I can't remember. But it was from 2004 on. And then again, 2 years in Taiwan. I think I moved out of Taiwan in 18, or it could have been 19. I'm not too sure. It's starting to get, it's starting to get cloudy. But when I first got there, government oversight was, we knew it was China. We knew it was the Communist Party. It was a big, I guess, awakening to understand that the Communist Party didn't mean that it was kind of like what we thought in American Gossip. It was very open. It was very capitalistic. There was a lot of things going on, money to be made, businesses to be open. It was open for business. And when I got there, we had YouTube and Google and actually it was MSN Messenger at the time, and Skype was big, and Yahoo Messenger, all that stuff. Facebook just started. Everything was in China. And then over the years, after Hu Jintao switched to Xi Jinping, you started to see things shut down. Like I used to live and rent a place right down the street from Google headquarters in Beijing. And then one day you just saw the sign come off, and that was it. Yahoo was there for a while. And then one day you saw the sign come off, and that was it, So yeah, it started to get clamped down, and that was kind of frustrating. But what happens is China has its own infrastructure. So this was two things. It's one, the outside influence on China and Chinese culture, and but the other thing was, it was very business focused, is that they kind of looked at it as, hey, we have 1.3 billion people. We can support our industries and and if there's a Skype, that's American, we can have a Skype that's Chinese. If there's a Twitter that's American, we'll have the Chinese Twitter. And so we're going to force you to use that. And so once you get into like that, I guess that ecosystem, that infrastructure that they have there, you really don't notice it. That you really just don't notice it until you kind of like start operating outside. If you want to do business outside, you'll see that there's firewalls, there's throttling of the internet. There's all kinds of different things. There's pages. If you're going outside you can't access MySpace. MySpace was there. You can't access Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, shit like that. But you still can live in the Chinese ecosystem. It's only when you're trying to go abroad or try to look at things outside. Now, if you are trying to build businesses outside or international, you need a VPN. If you are very online focused, social media focused, it's gonna be a painful. But yeah. That's basically it. You really don't notice it if you're just operating within the Chinese ecosystem.
Interesting, very interesting. I read a couple of books about China and kind of its history. One that I really liked is called Red Flags. I want to say it was by George Magnus. I want to say wrote that book, and he just touched a lot on kind of the past 150 years up to now, up to President Xi. I can never say the names correctly, but it's always interesting being able to talk to people about their experience. And you have a very unique experience for if and when you're in Congress. You also live in Taiwan, and China-Taiwan is definitely going to be an issue that seems to be here to stay for at least a while. At our own senators and presidents, and there is no clear, concise, this is our stance, other than ambiguity. Ambiguity seems to be the stance, and it goes back and forth, but depending on who you're asking. So it's very interesting, the fact that you've lived in both those places and you've experienced both those cultures. That's a very interesting, very unique place to be, and I think it'd be very helpful to have in DC. On that note, I know there's no question there, and you want specific questions. Do you have a thought process about China, Taiwan? Does living in those two places that provide any sort of insight for you?
So again, I lived in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan, and obviously Singapore is its own thing. Hong Kong and China has its own relationship and own history, and Taiwan as well. So they're very unique. And for me, it's a very simple question. That let me talk about Hong Kong really quick. Hong Kong is an amazing city. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's just an amazing city. It is vibrant and it's high energy. It's kind of like a New York of there, because there is just like everybody lives in small confined places, so they're like always out in the streets, and there's a lot of energy there, a lot of hustle, a lot of it's just amazing. It's an amazing place. And so one of the amazing things about Hong Kong was that it was always open to everywhere, but because of the relationship and the arrangement between British imperialism, Hong Kong treaties, and in Beijing, things were eventually going to change. And this handover process back to China was always there. And so people have seen change when it comes to government and when it comes to the approach of, the way things happen in Taiwan. And it was sad for some people. And Taiwan has developed in a totally different way. It is a totally different culture than mainland China, even though they do have similar language. It is a vibrant democracy. I mean, I was there, and you see, like, when it's election time, people have renting vans with big signs, trying to campaign, get elected. The influences between, say, the Dutch, the Japanese, different countries that have been in Taiwan is very prevalent there. You can feel it. It's a very different place. But that goes to the idea of, what does America do? Because we have this relationship with Taiwan, because we are a country that sees freedom, liberty, democracy. We uphold those values. Do we get involved with Taiwan-China relation and that huge, very complex history? I would say no. I mean, I'm sorry that it is, and I really love Taiwan, and I don't want it to change. And I love Taipei, and I lived in the southern city of Tainan. But I think that at the end of the day, would you? Do you have any kids?
I do not. I have nephews and nieces, though.
Would you want your nephews and nieces out in the middle of the Pacific fighting for Taiwanese independence?
I would not. And that's a common
argument. And that's a very simple question to ask and a very simple answer to make. And so that's kind of where I stand with it. And I wish the best. I hope that we can have some kind of economic relationship with China where it doesn't happen. I hope that we can negotiate a way that is prosperous for China and Taiwan and the United States. I hope that we can influence and convince that Taiwan stays as unique as it is, because it is a very, very special place with very, very nice and special people. But just ask that simple question, and to every American, I think that's you'll get the same answer all across the board.
Yeah, that is a good argument, and it's an argument that's starting to resonate a lot more with Ukraine, Russia, and I've been keeping up with that this week. It's been pretty wild, but it's an argument that's starting to resonate across the board with Americans more and more, at least from my vantage point. And it seems as though there's a big want in the American culture, and I put myself under this flag as well, that we kind of want to stop being the police of the world, that it's kind of time to start making sure America's middle class is strong, which is, I'm a CPA and a finance guy, and I'm a nerd about economics. Just, a bit about me going into what I'm about to say. Again, got my CPA, Master's of Accounting, just a focus in finance. I minored in economics. I love the topic, read all about it. And every country that I've seen thrive has a strong middle class. Every country that I've seen dissolve destroyed the middle class in one way or the other. And there seems to be a want to build up the middle class and to stop spending money abroad, such as in Ukraine, such as what could happen in Taiwan, and just to kind of stop being the police of the world. And that the argument you give there, the question you asked there, is a solid argument. It's a solid argument. I don't think that any American really wants their kids going and fighting a foreign war. And it's not to say that, that's not to say that, if I'm Zelensky, if I'm the Ukrainian president, if I'm the Taiwan president, I'm going to go ask for all the money I can. I'm going to go ask for all the, that's their job. And I get that. It's just interesting. It's a very interesting time period we live in. So yeah, I was just very curious about your opinions there. But let's move forward to, you got back to America, and did you get back right before COVID? It sounds like a time period.
About 2-3 years before.
Okay, so 2018, 2019-ish. When you came back, did you go straight into humanity? You're a small business owner, I saw. Did you just go straight into starting your own business, or what was next?
So I started a podcast in Taiwan, and it became very popular. So about 100,000 people per episode, sort of thing. And so it was pretty solid it was called Crypto 101, and basically just educating people about blockchain tech, crypto, Bitcoin, the whole, that emerging tech. And somebody scooped it up. Somebody reached out to me, just cold emailed me and said, "Hey, I want to buy your brand." And I was like, okay. I'm just sitting here in Taiwan doing my master's, sitting on my bed, recording in a microphone. If you want to buy this brand, go right ahead. And so they scooped it up, and I did a transfer over to them, and I went to San Diego for about 6 months and worked with them while they were doing that. And they had to downsize, so I wasn't one of the people on the chopping block, but I understood. When you downsize, you don't have expendable income just to have a podcaster roaming around the office talking to people. So I was either going to have to do more in a different capacity, or I was going to be on that chopping block. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to take my leave, a little bit of severance. And then I just bought a car and drove around the country for a couple months. So I was just able to, it was great, man. I took a plane, a ride into Portland, bought a car in Portland, then drove straight up to Washington, drove around Washington State, back down the 101, did the whole coast down to California, back down to San Diego, flew out to Japan, then flew to Mexico City, and then came back, got the car, and then just zigzagged across the United States. I think I hit around 30 states in that trip, you know, and ending up in Toronto after all that traveling. So after that, you know, I just came back to the, you know, Ohio, and then I bought a house over here and been living back over here. So yeah, it was just it was an interesting transition from San Diego. I'm sorry, from Taiwan to living back in Ohio.
That's sick. You're speaking my language with the travel. I'm a huge traveler. That's why I took my first job was in like IT consulting, Oracle, SAP, World, ERP, all that stuff. And that's why I took the job. I had to live in Florida for a few months, got to live in Alaska for 4 or 5 months, and then COVID hit and I started going on road trips.
How's Alaska?
I loved Alaska. So I was there in fall to winter time. So I really want to go in the summertime. I really want to get back there. I was stationed in Anchorage, and I was able to get like almost to south to Juneau, almost that far down. And I went to Alyeska to go skiing when the wintertime hit, and it was beautiful. There's a resort called Seven Glaciers. We can see, I don't know if I saw seven, but you can hypothetically see all 7 glaciers that surround it. It was awesome. It's a very cool place. I got to watch the start of the Iditarod. That was sick. And yeah, I definitely want to go back in the summertime.
Nope.
I have friends who are huge into fishing and hunting, and their pictures of where they've been is just up there is just incredible. I've always wanted to do that Highway 1 drive. I've been to California and Portland and Washington. I've never done the drive, and I love road trips. So very much speaking my language. Yeah, I that's like travel is one of my big things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't just take enough time when they travel too, you know. So I made a plan that like I will drive, but I'm only driving 4 hours a day. So it was just like, what's 4 hours away from me? And then I would stop there and get a hotel and just hang out for a day or two, depending on how I felt. And you know, I saw a lot of in little coastal cities that I would have haven't saw before or never seen before, and or just cities just in general. And so, yeah, I always had this little plan. Just like, I'm not. Some people, it's like I have to get to my destination, so they drive like 8 hours or 12 hours or whatever. And it's like, nah, man, I'm a 4 hours then stop, 4 hours then stop. And it was a really good, really interesting trip.
That's awesome. I love that philosophy. I'm somebody who will drive 8 hours. Although I'm from Kansas City, so if I was driving to Denver, for example, I'm in Denver at this very moment. If I was driving to Denver, for example, I wasn't stopping 4 hours in the middle of the fields. But no, I love that philosophy. It's very cool. Quick question, just on the side here. You're in Ohio. You're an Ohio guy. If you were to get a second home somewhere with all the traveling you've done, where would the second home be?
I would have a couple, honestly. I couldn't tell you. Depends on how much money I have. If I had, well, let's give you the $5 million budget, the $1 million budget, and the $500,000 budget. Right.
Love it.
So if I had $5 million in the bank, I would get a house in San Diego, and I would also get have a place on the lake here in Ohio. And then of course there'd be retirement money in the bank. If I only had $1 million, then Ohio house, that's great. But I also probably do a Portugal. If I was just 500 and that's all I had for retirement, when I'm talking about retirement, not like, you know, this room is living, I would go to Southeast Asia, and I'd probably do something like Vietnam or Thailand or something like that, where I could get the cost of living down and find a place over there. So there's a lot of great places in the world. It's just, I think it's all about like what, obviously it's just budget and what you can support.
Yeah.
But San Diego is just an amazing city. Portugal is an amazing city. Also cost of living down, but it's more of like middle of the road. You didn't have to need some money to live in San Diego just because of taxes, HOAs, shit like that is just insane. But you know, a lot of people poo-poo getting out of the country and going to like Southeast Asia, but you can live on $20,000-$30,000 a year and you're going to live very nicely.
Wait, so you said Portugal, the city?
No, Portugal, like Lisbon or something.
Okay,
like
okay.
Porto,
Yes,
like Portugal, the country.
I did a few months in Portugal, and
a
month in the south coast of Spain and the Spanish islands. I absolutely agree that if I had, depending on the budget, one of the places I'd have a house is either Lisbon or southern Portugal, like Lagos or somewhere around that area.
Yeah.
Maybe my favorite traveling I've ever done, honestly, is in Portugal. It was amazing. So I hooked my ears up when you said that, man. I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, man. No, Lisbon's great, man. So my buddy's Portuguese, and so he did a wedding out there. I was in his wedding, and then did quite a bit of travel. Me and my brother traveled Portugal and Spain that time. I've been to Europe multiple times, but yeah, after I went to Portugal, I was like, oh, this place is not only it's affordable. I mean, I'm not talking about like Southeast Asia affordable, but it's affordable-ish, you know. It's a great quality of life, great weather, great people, still European, you know, it's a European place. So you got that vibe, those small little roads, streets, you know, kind of laid back at the siestas. And it's just, I love it. I love it. But again, it's just like, where do you, how do you, like, what's the budget? What are you going to do? And so
for sure.
Yeah, and you're a finance guy, so I think some people try to retire, especially like here in the States, or more expensive countries. They try to retire, and honestly, retirement didn't work out, or they're trying to retire in a bear market, which absolutely sucks for some people, and then they have to work further. It's like don't poo poo going on to like Vietnam or Thailand for a while, because I mean, again, great beaches, beautiful lifestyles, places like Bali as well, Indonesia, places in Indonesia, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was actually retiring in a bear market. My dad wanted to retire, but he's getting closer to retiring. He's an ER doctor, and he wanted to get closer to retiring this year. And in a bear market, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to, instead of going part-time, maybe I'll go 75%. And he would 100% move out of country, Thailand, to retire. But my stepmom, and actually I fall in this camp as well, but like, no, you just want to be close to family. That's the big thing for me, is like, I could probably do Portugal for a second home. But once you start talking Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, one of my brothers, I think he will end up in Australia when it's all said and done. For me, it's like, I'd like to be closer. I'd like to be closer to the family, just in case, and just for the holidays and all that.
Yeah.
So a lot of factors into it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when your parents get older, it's like that really starts to factor in. And my girlfriend's parents are in their 70s, retired, and she must stay around, close by. That's why we're in her hometown of Bay Village. And yeah, I mean, and bear markets suck. I know my stepdad, he had his 401k there, and he thought he had retirement, and then when the 2008 hit, and he was still a couple of ways away, but it was just like he went from like $1 million, where he was like, oh, I have $1 million in retirement, to 250K, and he's like, what the hell is this going to go back up? Luckily it did. His company got sold, and so he was a shareholder of the company, so he did have retirement. Everything worked out because just a fate and good luck. But it was kind of sketchy there for a minute, and I was like, man, that really sucks. I mean, especially, he was in a factory job, so it's like, factory labor, you're getting up there in age. It's like, how much longer can you do it? When that 65 hits, you're like, I gotta bounce,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm 26 right now, and I'm starting to feel, and I can't imagine 40, 50, 60, 70, like my shoulder, man, I move it, it pops. And it's like, oh my gosh, when did this start happening? And like, that is scary. I'm glad it worked out, and unfortunately it worked out for everybody. I'm glad to hear it worked out in that case. And then let's move forward a little bit. You get back to the States, you do your trip, you're back in Ohio. At that point, what was next for you? Was it start the business? Was it, I want to run for Congress? What happened there?
So I've always been so for the past years I've been in like content creation. So the business was always making podcasts for other people. So I took a couple of jobs working for other people. I worked for a company called Decrypt Media for 3 years doing their podcast, their daily news show. I just left that about 6 months ago. No, it wasn't 6 months ago, about maybe 4 months ago, honestly, 3 months ago. And so I did that for 850 episodes, or over 3 years of daily episodes. And so basically that's what I did. But then, when I got back, it was more of a just want to get involved with different things, the community and so on and so forth. So I volunteered a lot of places. I volunteer now, just, go out there, talk to people, go to help with local initiatives. And, that led to one thing after the other, is just threw my hat in the ring. I was thinking about, different positions. Is it going to be, I think everybody, when they look at how they want to be involved with public service, you got to look at your skills, your background, right? So international experience, travel, so on and so forth. That seemed more of a congressional approach than, say, a city council. I think that my skills would probably be more useful there. So yeah, that's what I did.
Very cool. Very cool. And I completely agree. I think especially that China-Taiwan experience, that's super useful. And obviously, like, you're very well spoken. It seems like you'll be able to communicate and work together with people. I think would be a great fit from my 30 minutes here getting to know you. But when you decide to run for Congress, what is that process like? I obviously cannot speak to that process at all. What were like the big steps that the big hurdles you ran into that you weren't expecting, and the good and bad of it all?
Yeah, the good and bad of it all. I think, what's the good and bad of it all? The good is the experience. I think the biggest thing that I took away from the whole experience was my skin is thick as hell. Like when you go in there to run for an office, especially a congressional office or a big office, right? You got to put yourself out there, and you got to travel. You got to talk to a lot of people. You have to do things that are embarrassing, and then sometimes things don't work out. I remember I had a fundraiser where nobody showed up. I had meet and greets where nobody showed up. You have to just persist through that, persevere through that. And it sucks. It absolutely sucks. It's embarrassing to put your name on a big banner and take it into a parade and say, with my big ass face on there saying Diemer for Congress, and waving to people, during 4th of July parades and things like that. It's I don't want to say it's embarrassing, but it's really, a weird thing to do, to call people up and ask them to be volunteers in your parade and say, hey, can you walk with me and wear this Diemer for Congress t-shirt? And so if you do that for 2 years, the biggest thing I took away, like I said, the biggest positive was that you come out with really thick skin, So it's like, hey, go speak for an event. I'll go up there cold. You just cold speak. It doesn't matter, Go do this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like this interview, I just pop on, do it live. Hey, people hate me. You really. That was the biggest thing I took away from it. The negatives are plentiful. There's a lot of negatives. I was listening to a podcast just the other day, and there's this church group that actually has this, like, that looks for candidates, Democrat, Republican, nonpartisan, that just wants to help them with family matters when they run for office if they support the candidate. Because what people really don't tell you is how much it stresses you and your family. First of all, they don't want to be on the limelight, but you are. So now they and proxy are. You're gone doing all kinds of things, and you're stressed out, and you're bringing it home with you. You date night for you and your other is going to be going to a campaign event, a fundraiser, a dinner, something. It's going to be politically focused. So like that's a huge thing that you really don't know until you're into it, and then you have to figure out if that's how you want your life to be, and is the thing that you're focused on more important. And this is actually the case. Is it more important than your current family structure and your current family's health and well-being? Like, is what I'm doing in the office that I'm running for, is the work that I'm going to do in Congress or the state house or so on and so forth, that important? Because if your family's not 100% behind you and want to be campaigning, want to be out there being political and rubbing elbows and date night for a fundraiser for X judge or X other candidate, it's going to be stressful. And so that's one thing. That's a big negative. People not believing in you. That's a big negative. Again, it gives you thick skin. And the positive is hindsight saying, wow, yeah, I did that. But until you're popular, until people think that you could win, until you raise some money, until you get on the board somehow, it's you versus the world. And as much as you want to say is I'm running for Congress, people don't give a shit. The candidates don't give a shit. The party doesn't give a shit. The donors don't give a shit until you actually start performing and until you are a winner. And once you're a winner or somebody that could win, then people start to rally behind you. And but those early first people, I owe them all the things just to support me and be by me, because everybody's just gonna be like, oh yeah, you're running for Congress, good luck. And then you're just like, oh, you just gotta keep it and keep going forward. And the last thing I want to say that I learned or saw and was very surprised about running for office is your biggest supporters come from places you don't think about it. The first thing your finance person is going to do is try to Rolodex you, which means you're just going to take all of your contacts, all your emails, all the people you went to school with. If you haven't seen them saw them for 20 years, it doesn't really matter. Get them all, get their contacts, and start asking them for money and support. It's humbling. It's embarrassing. But it's like, hey, how you doing, Troy? I haven't talked to you for 20 years. You got $20? Actually, it's more like 500. Hey, you got $500? You're like, who the hell is this? Hey, man, I sat next to you in, English 101. Yeah, finance class 101, You're like, what the hell? No, I don't think so, bro. And you just got to keep doing that. But my biggest surprise, like I said, was just the support that came out of places I didn't even know to look. For example, like I told you, my that podcast, Crypto 101, got acquired by a company, right? And I ran for office and I put my stuff out there and I was calling all my friends, my closest friends, and I got $20 and $50 and $100 here and there, and family members, okay, Matt's running for Congress, that's great, sort of thing. And here he comes, one of the co-founders with maxed out donation. Where'd that come from, man? Like, I didn't even know you still liked me. I didn't even know you remember who the hell I was 2 years later, 3 years later. And it's like, and I still contact him, daily. But he's like, yeah, you know what? I really saw something in you. I think that you'll make a big difference. I think that you have what it takes, and I want to support you. And I was just like, what? And so he helped me. He was an advisor. He's donated twice, maxed out to both cycles, the primary and the general. And it's just like I would have never expected it, right? So I guess that's like the whole experience in a nutshell. It's believe in yourself. You're gonna get some skills that you don't think are part of that skill set that you were kind of going for, and just keep just keep doing it, man. You just got to keep going forward.
Keep building the muscle. That's the story. So when you were saying building thick skin, it actually it made complete sense to me that could be someone that could do that. As like, first off, you've had that bravery muscle. I have a really good story actually I want to get into in a second about the bravery muscle. But being someone who you went from Ohio to Hawaii to China and you did this whole traveling thing, you started a podcast, which is also like no one's like, right here. Like I can't tell you how many people are gonna watch this. Maybe a few thousand, maybe a few. Like I couldn't tell you, and like no one cares, man. No one cares until you get the numbers and all that stuff. And I hope to one day, because it just allows me to talk to even more great people like yourself, and so all of that. So, but you just clearly are building up this bravery muscle to be able to do that. So, building the thick skin feels like something you've been doing since you were a kid up till now. Just talking with you right now. And on that note, there's a story of the bravery muscle that I love. When I was going into my master's program, I went to the University of Kansas, by the way. Very proud Jayhawk. We get some crap for not being a great school, but man, I went to a great program. CPA, year in, year out, their program, top 5 CPA scores, top 5 that pass percentage-wise. Great program. But going into that program, a woman who runs a not-for-profit in Texas these days, she had a very cool story. She was from a very, very small town, wanted to play basketball, would have to play with the boys because there's just such a small town. And her coach sent in a video to like all these colleges. She got like 1 or 2 callbacks. KU was one of them. So she goes from this town of like 100 people or whatever it is to KU, which is like the big city for her, which Lawrence, Kansas. I love that town. It's a town. It's a college town. It's not, but for her, it's the big city. And she's talking about, I'm building that bravery muscle. And then obviously she goes to the Master's of Accounting program at KU, and she moves to Kansas City and like building a bravery muscle. She gets an offer in New York, builds that bravery muscle even more, gets a big time offer out in Europe and takes that offer, is building that bravery muscle. At this point, she has that confidence, has that courage to go start her own business. And she actually had the idea when she saw some teammates at a reunion, and some of them were doing really well and some of them weren't doing super well. And she thought, well, they definitely should be. Like, they work hard. I know these people. I know these women. Like, they work very hard. They're pretty smart. Like, they should be able to make something out of their lives. And that's what started not-for-profit. And the whole time she was talking about, I just kept building that bravery muscle. Like, I wouldn't have the strength to have gone to Europe. I wouldn't have the strength to have started a business when I was 18, but you just keep doing things. And I can see that in you. I can see that you are somebody that's constantly building that bravery muscle. Like what you're doing, like, I love what you're doing. I love the travel.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love all of it. Obviously, I love the podcast. As someone who has a podcast, all of that, man. But it is hard, man. It's definitely like a nerve-wracking thing to do. Like, so nothing but respect for all of it.
Podcasts are so still, even though they've been around for decades, they're so underrated. And I think it's interesting when you say, throughout the campaign, I was called a podcaster. He's like, oh, Matthew Diemer, the podcaster. And I always took it as like a derogatory, right? They were just saying that to try to, I kind of belittle, what I do,
Mm-hmm.
But look at some of the most influential people right now. You have the Rogans, you have Tucker Carlson, you have, Michelle Obama had her podcast for a while. Like if you want to get your brand out and get your ideas out there, podcast is where to go. And the biggest people in the world, Conan Bryan, Bill Burr, they all have podcasts, and that's what they do. And it's weird that people still kind of like look at a podcaster as something that's like, oh, that's a hobby, or it's something that's like, it's a thing. Also, the amount of like you said, the amount of people you get to meet, the knowledge that you get just by talking to people. So, and if you have say if you're in finance, like as you are, or blockchain or whatever business it is, by inviting people onto a podcast, first of all, it's a great opener. Like, hey, come on to talk about you, and everybody's gonna be like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna come on and talk about me, right? Look at me right now, I'm here talking about me. Some dumbass talk about me. Who's listening to me? Right. But you invite these people on, and then what you have is almost infinite access to their knowledge. Just ask the right questions, and you get that insight. And so podcasters are not only influential because they're, putting their ideas out there, and you basically created your own platform to elevate these ideas that you want to talk about, but also you have the ability and the access to some of the best, most unique people out there, and you get to learn from them for absolutely free. The only thing you have to do is put some editing in there. You're live streaming. You're not even going to fucking edit this thing, but just, put them out there and platform them, and you get to, talk to these people. And it's either inspirational, it's knowledgeable, it's fun. It's, you get a connection down the way. It's so underrated. I don't know why any business, small business entrepreneur, small business owner, freelancer, contractor doesn't have a podcast themselves. I don't care if you're a carpenter or electrician, or a lawyer, or whatever you do, a marketer. You gotta have a podcast, some kind of platform, because it's invaluable.
I completely agree. I have so much I can say off of that. I think it's just by far the most underrated platform on earth at the moment. And so you mentioned Rogan. Rogan is the big one. That's definitely the biggest podcast on earth, and I think he deserves it. I came across him. I have so many things I want to talk about this moment, but I came across him. I didn't know who he was before his podcast. A buddy of mine said, "Hey, a professor's on this show. You should listen to this 30 minutes. You'd really enjoy it." And it was about markets, just knowing myself. And I liked the professor that was on it. And I was like, "Oh, that was really good." And, and then some other professor popped up on Rogan, and I was like, "Oh, I'll watch that again." If you watch him enough, you just understand, like, okay, this is somebody who's open-minded. He's going to listen, and whether you agree with him or not on his points, he's going to let people talk. And it was a big eye opener for me. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to get into this, actually. And then you branch out, you find all these different, there's a podcast for everything now. Like you said, if you're a carpenter or anything, you should make one. And it's actually a discussion I had with one of my older brothers he's an entrepreneur. He's a real estate land guy. And he's like, yeah, my coach told me I needed to start a podcast. Like, it's for all the reasons you just said. And it really opened up my eyes to the platform. And it's just the best way to get to learn, to get to know people. It's incredible. And like, I'm really excited that people like yourself, people like RFK, like, they're starting to take advantage of this, that there's no other platform on the planet that you can understand somebody. You can really get to know somebody just by listening to them talk for 2 or 3 hours in a conversational manner. And that's why I'm really big on, it's a conversation, not an interview. Like, whatever we want to talk about, let's talk about it, because you can really understand somebody's soul, so to speak. And I think RFK is the big one right now. So I think what RFK is doing is going to become mainstream. And you're going to need to go on places where, if you're a Democrat, you can't just go to CNN. If you're a Republican, you can't just go to Fox. You need to go on these big platforms with people that disagree with you and let people know who you are. I think it's going to be a huge way that people run in the future. And right now, it's definitely a stigma. If someone said, "Oh yeah, Matthew, the podcaster on a debate stage," yeah, they're saying that in a derogatory manner. But like you just said, I think you'd be able to come back and say, "Hey, I've got to talk to a ton of good people, and I've got to learn a ton, and test my ideas, just debate my ideas and question myself, and just learn as much as I can." And like, outside of a book, which is somebody's life story, I don't know a better platform. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Obviously, I guess we are a little biased here, but
yeah, no, it's not that I'm biased. It's just, yeah, I'm definitely biased, but you're right. Just everybody should have a podcast, and then also it's just like a good way to actually, because you're recording it before, because that this is just like you get to know people on a different, kind of differently. It's like, we don't sit down just to talk to somebody, even if you're making friends, you just go to the bar and you're gonna talk about some bullshit, sports, quips back and forth, some superficial bullshit. But if you actually, but this is a venue where you could actually sit down and talk to somebody, and you're like, "Oh, hey, that's a cool dude," like, you become friends with somebody virtually in a kind of a weird way. I just got an email from somebody yesterday, and this is not an out of the ordinary email that I get. And they said this, and they said, "It was your podcast that was instrumental in me making my career path change 18 months ago. I strongly believe your podcast helped me past the interview process. Thank you. I just want to convey my love."
That's awesome.
I mean, and the thing is if you're making somebody, and again, if you get one of those emails that you influence somebody with the shit that you're doing and talking to, like, I think that's huge. That's huge, because you're providing them information, and especially if you're doing it in a way that the most successful businesses help other people, right? You're creating a product to help somebody do something. Yeah. You're trying to make their life easier. And that's what, the best businesses figure out. It's like, how do I make your life easier? How do I get you access to something in the less amount of steps. And if that's something you can do with a podcast, if that's something you can do with a physical product in your hand, if that's something you do with a service, if it's financial services, accounting, then you will be successful because everybody needs some kind of way to break the friction of some sort of processes. And anyway, I just love emails like that. I'm not going to, of course, say the guy's name or where he went to work, but I did say it's a guy, so that dwindles it down to 50%. But yeah, man,
down to 3 billion now.
Oh, that's awesome. Your numbers are off, man. We're at 4 billion, man. 4 billion.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It would be 4 billion. Oh my goodness. But actually, I completely agree. This podcast, if you ever look at my podcast, the start of it is a vending machine podcast, and
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I had a vending machine company in college. It's really weird. When I go on Spotify online, mine will show me the newest episode. My buddies will show him the first episode. I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. I need to call Spotify and I want to flip. But it started as a vending machine podcast. I really wanted to start a podcast, and I wanted to provide value. I was like, well, I had a vending machine company in college, and I learned a lot. So I'll just talk about what I can talk about. I wanted to get the 50 episodes. I got the 10, and I was like, I don't know what else to talk about. Like I kind of feel like I've shared what I can share, and honestly, like the podcast I wanted to have was something like this, where I could talk to people, learn their stories, get to know new things, know new people, all of that. However, every now and then, you want to say a couple of weeks ago even, I'll get a DM on Instagram or something. It's like, hey, I listened to your podcast. I just started my vending machine company. Thank you. I wouldn't have known where to start without that. And I was like, oh wow,
I fucking love it, man.
Crazy,
I love it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm like, oh my god, I was like, it's a really good feeling. Like, okay, I made something that I didn't know. Like I just told my story. I didn't know exactly what to do. It helped people. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. So yeah, no, it's a great feeling. We are coming up in 46 minutes here, and we started late. I'm gonna have to hit the road at about 15:20. So I want to get to kind of you as a candidate a little bit. What are some key issues that you care about? Like what are you running on, issues wise?
Well, what I was running around and what I will run on. So again, I'm not a candidate at the moment, but what I ran on, we need to make things in Ohio. In Ohio, we need to make things in America. I think that's just the number one thing. We have to bring businesses back. We have to build our GDP, our economy. I think that's just the number one thing. And then when we're building the economy, when we're building our GDP and putting these manufacturing jobs, which people say aren't ever going to come back to the United States, I think it's complete bullshit. Some things will, some things won't. I mean, socks. You're not going to make socks maybe in the United States anymore, but there is a lot of manufacturing that is overseas, especially in China, that needs to come back for infrastructure, national security, and so on and so forth. And so I was running on, just bringing all that stuff back, because that's going to, if we manage that well, it's going to solve a lot of these questions and problems that we have, funding, infrastructure improvements, of bringing down the debt, of make sure we have Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security funded, and there for people. Shit's getting more expensive, and the way to, make sure everything stays viable isn't cutting programs. It's creating more revenue. It's just get the revenue up. And how you do that, you have to start building things here and making sure companies are here and allowing the best people to do that and immigrate to America to do that as well. Do you want them to do it in India and China, or do you want to do it here? So that's basically what that's basically what I ran on, so it's all for me, it's all about the economy, because I think that we have to be more aggressive when it comes to growth. We have to be more aggressive when it comes to innovation. We have to be more aggressive when it comes to making stuff here. And we should be proud that things are made here. And coming from a place from the Midwest, I mean, you were in Kansas as well. So, but coming from, an Ohio, from Northeast Ohio, where we had the steel towns, where we had the auto manufacturers, we see cities all around us that we're relying on a Ford plant that now just went to Mexico, or steel plant that went to Japan or China, or just closed altogether because of cheap Chinese steel or Japanese steel back in the 80s. And now the towns are basically boarded up, the population's down, salaries are down. You kind of look at it and go, this is fixable. We just have to have policies. We have to have the want to do this. And anyway, so that's basically what I ran on. Just coming from a Ohio centric kind of point of view of somebody who was born in the late 70s, saw the downturn of Northeast Ohio because of jobs moving out, and want to see that come back.
I love it. It's actually, I mean, again, finance guy, but I have read a ton about different perspectives on what builds a good country and the histories of other countries, kind of the rise and fall. Again, China is one of those countries I've read about, but the rise and fall of Rome and a lot of what brings, I'd say that the main ingredient really is, again, the fall of the middle class. When you see that happen, especially when you see it on graphs, like the decade over decade graphs of how strong a middle class is, to once that starts declining, you can correlate that to just really scary times in a country. And I am an optimist when it comes to America. Warren Buffett, I just had a discussion with Matt Allen, who is part of Grit Capital, and they're really cool. They're a really cool social media, just financial news and financial opinions company. I suppose that's the word. And we talked about Warren Buffett. It's one of his favorite guys, but I definitely agree with a lot of what I've had, a lot of what he said in that conversation. And you just don't bet against America. I am definitely an optimist when it comes to America. However, we do need to start seeing, like, this needs to be the down point. This needs to be the point on the graph where we start going back to the right direction, back towards the top of the graph. And it's possible. Like you said, it's definitely possible. There's a lot of debate that we don't have the time to get into here today about immigration, about taxes. And taxes is one of the things that I studied a lot, actually, during my master's program. Was one of my focuses. And it gets complicated, obviously, but if you get deep enough into it, you can start to see what appears to be causation, definitely correlation between tax rates and how do you get jobs certain places and all these things. And again, immigration is a big factor in all of that. But all that to say, completely agree. That is the number one thing. In my mind, that's how you help people live the American dream, live a good life.
Well, 100%. And also you create yourself a diverse America. And when I mean diverse America, I mean in skills and knowledge and basically human infrastructure. Because, what you see right now is when you have these manufacturing jobs going away, and, like bustling cities, you're going to need carpenters. Bustling cities, you're going to need electricians. Bustling cities, if you have manufacturing jobs, you're going to have these skills within the manufacturing that you have. If it's the machinery service, if it's the actual person that's pushing things down the line, if it's the managers, those kind of skills, how to lead teams. And that diversity of knowledge built off of, just by pushing it into your middle class not only helps national security, because you have this robust of basically problem solvers if anything happens, or we need to turn the country into a COVID, vaccine making, mask making, PPE machine. Those people are there, so it's like the diversity of knowledge you need that in America. And now we're just kind of going to service jobs, like, oh, you know what, I'm either restaurant workers, which is great. I was hospitality for a long time, fast food, Uber, Instacart, all these services are becoming like what the middle class is being built off of, like slowly but surely. And then we have the stratification of of what's happening, but we really need to bring like jobs back so we can have that robust richness of skills. And that's going to be from a healthy economy with diversity.
Absolutely. I love the term problem solvers. That's what they are. That's what everyone is. You're a problem solver, electrician, all types of manufacturing. I love that. I love that word. I love what you're saying. Completely.
I mean, no, but how embarrassing is it though? And I think that's one thing. Is like, how embarrassing was it when you were like, hey, we need masks for COVID. Believe masks, don't believe in the whole thing. I don't give a shit. But you know what? I don't want to be calling Italy or fucking China and saying, hey, can you give us some masks because we can't make it here? That's embarrassing, man.
That's true.
That is embarrassing.
That's true. Yeah. That's something that needs to get done. That's something that definitely needs to get done.
We should be able to do that here. I mean, and I think we have a population, we have the economy, and we need to have the skills and in the infrastructure for that to build it here. So it's like, and if the president says, hey, the emergency act to start manufacturing some goods, we don't just call China, or we don't that's insane.
Yeah, we need to be self-sufficient, not only in resources 100%. But in skills. Yeah,
100%.
I'm with you completely. Absolutely with you. So I have a couple closing questions, but before I get to those, any other issues that are near and dear to your heart?
That's the top of my mind right now. Again, it's been a little bit since I ran a campaign, so maybe I'm missing some of my bullet points. But
no, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just curious about you, man. I was curious, and where would you align yourself? Republican, Democrats, maybe a combination of a third party? Because right now I definitely fall in the centrist area. Maybe I lean a tiny bit left. I would call myself almost It's hard to say. Maybe a forward Democrat, so like a combination of a couple of parties. How would, if you can, and I know it's hard to do, especially in today's age, but if you could, where would you define yourself?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's what RFK Jr. is doing. That is probably going to be the most innovative aspect of it. It's long form podcast. It's going on the Rogans. It's going on Jordan Peterson's. It's going all that stuff. Because I think that a lot of people, how many times have you spoken with somebody that says I'm an independent? You know what that means? I hate both parties. You know how many times have you heard that says you talk to a Republican that believes in democratic issues? Why? Because they can't just go full Democrat, but they believe in some of the stuff on the left. Same thing with the Democrats believing in that stuff on the right. How many times have you seen a third party come out and say, "Oh, I would love to support them, but they're not going to win"? Like Andrew Yang's Forward Party, like Andrew Yang's books. I don't know if you read them, but like he identified some of the issues with the United States a decade before or during the last presidential campaign that people weren't even talking about. We're talking about we're talking about self-driving cars, and we're talking about the truck drivers and the biggest employer of men in the country, right? So it's like the long form discussion of ideas is the number one thing that we need to do. And the second thing that the people and the constituents need to do is listen to those long forms, so that these ideas can get out there and start voting on the ideas, not on the party. And so I really don't want to classify myself, because if you ask about, a slew of issues, you're going to hear me give a wide range of answers across the board that can be very progressive to very conservative, to right down the middle, to different kind of outside the box thinking as well. So I don't know where I classify myself. All I know is that we do have to have these long form conversations. So because I think Americans are just really sick of the cookie cutter bullshit that's being spewed by politicians, and they try to just vote for the lesser evil without the things that really speak to them.
Yes. Damn, I want to rescind my answer now, because that's how I feel too. It's exactly how I feel too. Not as a candidate, obviously, but as a voter, as Troy Goldenberg. And I just talked to Joshua Equal, who he is in the Libertarian Party. He helped start the Classic Liberal Caucus. I just talked to him. I think that episode's up now already, actually. And he said the same thing about, we got to stop voting for the lesser of the two evils. And that's kind of what our system has incentivized us to do. I'm like really big into the Forward Party, because their thing is ranked choice voting. Like, their one big thing, if I had to choose it for them, it's ranked choice voting. It's get another party up there. Like, let's have a diverse group of ideas and a diverse group of people in the same sense. When I say diverse, it's the same sense that you were talking about. And I love it. And that's actually like RFK on that topic. Like, it's very interesting when I'm on Twitter, and I'm trying to grow my Twitter. So I'm like, definitely, I'm tweeting a lot about different things, and I'm trying to like figure out how to go down this avenue. RFK is something I find myself defending a lot, and it reminds me a lot of 2016 Trump. I hated Trump personally, and I was one of these people. I was basically, I'm ashamed to say it, but I was one of these people that was basically like, if I got on social media and I said something, it was basically like to shame people, like, how could you vote for this man? And I wasn't open-minded about it at all. And you fast forward to now, 7 years, 8 years later, and I see the same thing happening with RFK. And I personally, I've listened to him talk, and in my opinion, he's genuine. I disagree with him on a lot of things, but he's genuine. He's coming from a place of, this is what I truly believe, and this is what I think is right, and I'm going to stand up for what I think is right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's a good actor, but I don't see it. And all I see on Twitter are these articles is trying to basically smear him and basically shame you into thinking, hey, how could you vote for this guy? And I really want to get away from that. And if there's any, and whatever you think of this candidate or RFK or that candidate, whatever it is, I want to get away from that of like, we got to stop. It didn't work in 2016. And like, if you really think it's going to work to not get this guy, if you really hate this guy, you think it's not going to get elected, well, how about you go on a podcast and talk about it? Give me a long form. Okay, pull up the Joe Rogan RFK podcast. Pull up the All In podcast. That's someone we haven't mentioned yet, actually. I love the All In podcast. I think they're four brilliant men, and they're not afraid to say what they truly believe, and they come with evidence. I mean, obviously they're very successful. They're, I think, 3 of the 4 billionaires. They're all founders, and they're very successful people. They bring evidence to their opinions. And pull up that one, and let's literally just do this. Let's go on a live stream. We'll watch it. Anytime you want to say something, we'll pause it and we'll talk about it. And like that's how you can convince me, not just RFK. He's just the one using the podcast platform, of any candidate. Like, I think it's just, we're on the cusp of, with podcast and with different innovations and the coming of new parties. I believe we're on the cusp of something great here, of a better way of doing politics and a better way of figuring out what's right for the country. And it makes me very excited. Talking to people like you makes me very excited. I'm pretty hyped up about it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I just want to just I know you have to get out of here, but I just want to end that. I don't know if I'm going to ever vote for somebody that doesn't allow themselves just to have a conversation with somebody. And the thing, and that's what I want to say is I respect the podcasters that are platforming RFK Jr., but also are willing to take the, hours out of their day to, take the hours out of the day. They're welcoming these hours out of the day to, have this conversation, ask challenging questions. The American people have been spoon-fed, or not spoon-fed, that's the wrong word, have been given a bunch of political propaganda rhetoric, BS for so long, and they see through it every time it comes out of a person's mouth, that it's not authentic, that it's tested by polling and consultants, and it was written in a lab, and they're sick of it. They're sick of it. They do want to, and that's what makes not just a politician. I think that authenticity, people see authenticity. People see if you're being true to yourself or trying to be true to yourself and true to them. And the politicians, the way that has done in politics, that it has been done up until I think this point, believe people to two things: one, to be dumb, and two, to be not forgiving. And I think when you put a candidate out there that you might agree with or you might not agree with, that might say some stupid things, that might not say some stupid things, that puts their foot in their mouth, but if they're authentic and they are speaking their truth, people will be more forgiving than you think. And they just won't throw you under the bus because you said something wrong. They will say, "Oh, I don't agree, but thank you for coming out. Thank you for sitting down for the conversation. Thank you for telling me what you believe." And even if you go back and go, "Hey, I caught you and you changed your ideas," you're allowed to change ideas, because I change ideas all the damn time by talking to somebody new that makes me go, "Oh, that's a good damn point."
Exactly,
I'm going to adopt that point.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what is why you get people around you that are smarter than you. So you can milk off those ideas and put them into your platform and in your next talking point. And don't be ashamed about it. You don't even have to quote them. Just start doing it. Well, maybe give them a little citing. Like my boy over there.
Give him credit.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, give a little credit. But yeah, and I think the American people are sick of that, and I think that we just have to start treating people as people. The people who are intelligent, thinking people that understand what they want out of a candidate, and aren't complete assholes and want to just pin you up and throw you under the bus. They're forgiving if you are true to yourself and authentic. And I think that's what we're seeing with this long form podcast and so on and so forth. So I appreciate you taking time to talk today. It's good to meet you, Troy. Outside of the DMs and Twitter, and I hope that you have a great day. You have a good podcast and drive safe.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. Real quick, there's two questions I always ask. And
okay.
Thank you for making time. I appreciate it, man. It's a pleasure to be able to get to know you and pick your brain and just learn more about you. But two questions I always ask at the end, and then we'll get out of here. First off, are there any books that you love, favorite books, paradigm shifters or otherwise?
Oh, bro. I just read the Three Body Problem trilogy right now. I don't know. Are you a sci-fi fan?
No, sorry. What was it?
The Three Body Problem trilogy.
Three Body Problem. No, I've not heard of this.
He's a Chinese author, Cixin Liu. Phenomenal. So if any sci-fi fans out there, what do I got back there? That's Barry Gordy. I'm reading Lincoln right now by can't remember who it is. Anyway, game-changing books. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Is
very cool.
Is Three Body Problem. It's the last one I had, and it's very impactful. It's a great sci-fi that makes you think about the Fermi paradox, dark matter, time in different ways, and if you want to connect with aliens. So read it.
Super cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. As far as sci-fi goes, my favorite book I ever read is actually a Star Wars book. It's called Thrawn by, I want to say, Timothy Zahn. He's the one that wrote it. Oh my God, his writing blew me away. It was absolutely incredible. It's political. I mean, Star Wars is obviously a little political, and it's tactical. It's just Timothy Zahn. He's a talented guy. As far as sci-fis go, that's my recommendation. Then my last question, I'll let you go, and I actually need to start running too. In your opinion, what is the meaning of life?
That is an amazing question. I don't know what the meaning of life is, but I could tell you what I try to have the meaning for my life is I don't want to die and not do anything. I don't want to die and not say I tried. I don't know if I'm going to be successful. I don't know if I'm going to be rich. I don't know if I'm going to be a congressperson. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, steer the nation or even, be good at my hometown, and do things, of consequence. But the number one thing is I don't want to have wasted this limited amount of time, and that the limited amount of time when I get looked back down by either family, relatives, or even myself on my dying deathbed to know that I actually changed the world in some way. And I'm going to strive and work my ass off to be that positive change.
That's beautiful. I love it. It's a great way to go about life. Matthew, once again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, man. It's been great getting to know you. And I look forward to following you on Twitter and seeing if a new campaign comes or if a new business comes and just what's down the road for you.
Likewise, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. I'll talk to you later, sir.
All right.